All right, well, we have one more topic, if you will, that I want to talk about, and that is the lows and highs of, or the extremes of intelligence. This picture to the right over here is a young man who is, I believe he's 12 or 13, and he's in college, basically. And so at one extreme of the intelligence scale, or the normal distribution, are people who fall below, so less than 70. And to be labeled as having an intellectual disability, a child must have both a low test score and a difficulty to adapt to the normal demands of living independently. So we have living independently as a key item, plus the additional issue of basically a low test score. And this is the group of kids that special ed tries to address, and certainly tries to help them be more adaptable as time goes along. Intellectual disability sometimes results from physical causes. We have a variety of physical abnormalities that contribute to mental or intellectual disability. One key one that's probably the most well-known is Down syndrome. And Down syndrome itself has another term. It's referred to as trisomy 21. And essentially what that means is on the 21st chromosome there is an extra gene, essentially, and that results in the characteristic features of a young Down's child, which means a flattened nose bridge, which is right in this area where I'm trying to point here, and oval-like eyes, and sometimes exaggerated features, not always. And one of the things about them is that they are probably the most loving children you ever come into contact with. Very gullible, but also very expressive, but they have a limit in their intellectual capacity because of this abnormality in the particular chromosome that they encourage. So they can have a limited capacity to live independently, and that's part of the disability that we see live independently. Now, on the other end of the continuum, we have what we oftentimes refer to as gifted, and this tends to be at that 130 and above, usually, contrary to popular myth, that sometimes we end up kind of categorizing them as maladjusted, kind of the eccentric genius, if you will. And they generally, this is not true, maladjusted myth that we're talking about. And they typically are pretty well adjusted, academically successful. A lot of controversy surrounds the gifted and talented programs that we see sometimes in these in schools. Sometimes they're referred to as TAG programs, gifted and talented programs. And the question is either of these sets of kids need to be taken out of the mainstream educational program in order to meet their specific needs. And there is a lot of controversy, a lot of debate over this particular issue, partly because of the larger issue of what school allows us to do, and that's socialization. And so whether it's a gifted kid or whether it's an intellectually disabled kid, the question is taking them out really going to work to help them in the long run? So essentially what we have and what we've resorted to is essentially pulling kids out of the mainstream classroom for specific, pulling kids out for specific needs. And that's kind of a compromise situation for a lot of these kids. Now, you can get kids in even more disruptive category, similar to the kids that my wife works with, that are referred to as affective needs kids. And we used to refer to them as ED, or emotionally disabled kids. And they are so disruptive in the classroom that oftentimes we have to pull them out in order to preserve an intact classroom environment for the kids of the classroom, but also to provide them with the structure that they need to succeed. So that gives you a little bit of an overview of the intelligence issue, the tests themselves as far as what we use to try to test kids, and then how we go about trying to meet their specific needs when we're actually talking about academics itself.